The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday, March 19th. I hope everybody is having a phenomenal week. This is my first show this week. A lot has been happening, so we'll be covering a lot of it today. As you know, I was in Wilmington, North Carolina, at the University of North Carolina in Wilmington. I gave a talk, probably around, I don't know, 200-300 students were there in the business school. It was a keynote at the beginning of a big, important week for the school. I gave a talk on the morality of finance. So once the talk is available, I'll put it up online somewhere. But yeah, 300 students, packed auditorium. Was a real blast. It was a lot of fun. And thank you for those of you in Wilmington who invited me. And hope to do it again someday. But yeah, really fun, good event. All right, today we're going to cover deportation and the whole impeaching the judges routine that's been going on for the last few days. It's a big issue, all deriving from an executive order that Trump signed that basically put into place the Alien Enemies Act. So we'll review that. We'll talk about mRNA. The attitude of this administration to and its health officials to mRNA. Putin and Trump are being on the phone. Trump and Zelensky are being on the phone. A lot going on over the phone between U.S., Ukraine, and Russia. Talk about that. Houthis in the news again. The United States claiming they're going to wipe them off the face of the earth. We'll see. We've got Gaza in the news. Israel has just sent ground troops into Gaza again. So back to the positions they held a while ago, at least back to some of the positions they held a while ago. We'll talk Germany's new big, we're going to spend a lot of money on defense and infrastructure stuff. Maybe a little bit of a critique of that. I don't want to get you the impression I think this is a good move by Germany. It ultimately is not. And then we'll talk about BYD, the Chinese auto company that if you're in America, will, or for that matter, probably the EU and Canada, will not have an opportunity to buy their cars. But we'll talk about the cars and what they mean. All right. Of course, you get to shape the show by asking questions in the super chat. Some of you have already engaged and started. Some of you are just supporting the show with stickers, like Ryan started us off with a very weak Canadian dollar, and getting weaker all the time, I take it, given tariffs, but so be it. We accept here Canadian dollars, shekels, and pretty much any currency that YouTube will accept, we accept. So please feel free to jump in with some support. But what I like in particular are questions. Yes. Not your average algorithm is just responding with a question. Just ask questions. That way you control the second half of the show today. So we have goals, as you know, for every hour. This is a show completely 100% supported by listeners like you. Couldn't happen without you guys. So thank you. All right. As you know, the president signed, as I think you know, some of you know, maybe you don't know because you don't listen to the news except for the Yaron Brook Show. The president has signed an executive order basically putting into play the Aliens Enemies Act, and in order to deport illegal aliens, illegal immigrants who are gang members or who are criminals, and deport them out of the country. I just give you a context, right? This act has only been triggered 3 times in American history. In the War of 1812, I think that's the context in which it was passed. The War of 1812, that's with the British. World War I and World War II. And now, now illegal immigration invasion. It's a law that is, specifically targeted to be applied at war. The AEA, as it's called, is triggered, quote, whenever there is a declared war between the United States and any foreign nation or government. That is the condition for triggering it. And yet, there's no war here. Gangs, even these awful Venezuelan gangs, the TDA, are not foreign nations or governments. You can't declare a war on gangs. You'd have to declare the war in Venezuela, I guess, and they would be Venezuelan agents, but that's a reach. There's just no basis for the application of the AEA in the context of deporting drug members. You might be for deporting drug members. That's fine.
Capita.
Whoops.
And then there's the criminals slipping through the cracks, of course.
Yeah, where's that coming from? What did I put into play here?
4 times. He got caught growing cannabis and still wasn't deported.
One minute.
His jail stint simply wasn't
Where
long
are
enough.
they? Yeah.
Well, credit to Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, because she tried to boot him out. But the courts, of course, landed on the same old human rights over public safety
I have
nonsense.
no idea
to put it in perspective,
where this is coming
that's
from.
one case out of 41,000 plus immigration appeals clogging our system. It's completely unrealistic to...
Okay, we can do that. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can just fix this. Okay, we got that. Okay, so we've got the basically the alien, the AEA, and the Trump administration is using this to deport what they argue are gang members, and they did this. They did this a few days ago, and specifically, it's not just deportation, right? It's not just that they're sending them back to their country of origin, which they've been doing since the Trump administration came into power. And indeed, all administrations have done that with illegal immigrants. They send them back across the border. In this case, in the case of the use of of this particular law, the use under this executive order, the deportations are to El Salvador. And not to El Salvador to live in El Salvador, but specifically to El Salvador to be incarcerated in El Salvador. Now, El Salvador, it has these new, fancy, massive jails in which they have imprisoned thousands, tens of thousands, of alleged gang members. Now, the United States is sending people without trial, without any due process, to a prison in El Salvador where they would, and quite easily could, basically disappear and never be seen again or never be free again. Whether they are actual drug members or not actual drug members, whether they have committed a serious crime or not, they are just disappeared into the black hole of an El Salvador jail. I mean, this is truly astounding that this could be happening. And the administration is admitting that many of the people they sent to these Salvadorian prisons, which are really horrific prisons, again, not just back to Venezuela, that many of the people sent to the Salvadoran prisons are people with no criminal record. Indeed, they argued, the administration argued, that they don't know much about these people. I mean, they rounded them up to a large extent based on El Salvadorian principles, which is you have a tattoo that looks like a gang tattoo, you're a member of a gang, and therefore off you go. Now, supposedly a bunch of innocent people were part of this, were seized and sent to El Salvador to jail because they had tattoos that were unrelated to gangs, but looked maybe a little bit similar to the gang tattoo, and off they went to jail in El Salvador. Who knows if ever to be seen again. And the government, what does the government explains? It says, the lack of criminal record does not indicate they pose a limited threat. In fact, based upon their association with TDA, if that association is real, the lack of specific information about each individual actually highlights the risk they pose. Like, we don't know anything about these people, but they must be risky. It demonstrates that they are terrorists with regard to whom we lack a complete profile. Now, we've already started doing this with cartel in Mexico, we're associating terrorism, gang members with terrorists. All gang members are terrorists. Now, there's no question that many of the people that were sent to El Salvador are indeed gang members. But when the government can't tell you how many of them are, and whether they're confident they all are, and whether they're confident they're all criminals, something is really, really, really broken. When they haven't gone in front of a judge, something is really, really broken. Basically, due process is out the window. And here's the thing. This administration doesn't care. They don't care. They don't think due process is important. Now, granted, Steve Bannon is not part of the administration. He's an outsider, but he represents MAGA to a large extent. He is a spokesman for MAGA. He is, in many respects, MAGA. Steve Bannon said about the deportation to El Salvador, if there's some innocent gardeners in there, hey, tough break for a swell guy. Yeah, let's just round up people who happen to have the wrong color skin, or maybe are, quote, or can't prove their legal status. Maybe they're illegal immigrants, although it seems like some people who've been rounded up in the deportation, these deportations are not illegals, actually have legal status, but nobody seems to really, really care that much. Hey, tough break. And due process? You know, that's just cumbersome. That's a lot of work. Put in front of a judge? That's a lot of work. Actually provide evidence? That's a lot of work. And it's a war right now, right? This is the Alien Enemies Act. This is an act of war. This is a act implied that a war is going on. We don't have time for due process. Come on, give me a break. And anyway, due process is overrated, we are told. Here's Adrian Vermeule. I've talked about Adrian Vermeule before. He is a Harvard law professor. He is the leading voice of what's called common good conservatism, a leading voice in the integralist movement. This is a movement with heavy of Catholics, really, really strong influence on J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is a huge fan of Patrick Deneen and Vermeule and others within this movement. Anyway, Vermeule is the leading legal thinker in the movement, and this is what he has to say about due process. He writes, process is an aspect of justice in the tradition, but it isn't the whole of justice, nor is it an end in itself. Due process, like all other law, is only properly law when it is rationally ordered to the common good as the tradition has always recognized. So if the common good requires, demands, that due process be eliminated because it's an emergency and the left and the judges, the leftist judges, then we can do away with due process when it is convenient to do so. Because the standard is the common good, not individual rights. And note, due process serves a crucial role in protecting individual rights. In general, process is not the whole of justice. That is true, Vimule. But it is an essential element in the execution of justice if your standard are the rights of the individual. If it's the common good, then yes, I can always come up with an excuse for an emergency by which we suspend individual rights, we suspend process, we suspend things all in the name of dealing with the emergency to the common good. But the American system of law is not based on the common good. It is based on individual rights. And process is essential for the protection of individual rights. We need an objective process, which is what the courts are supposed to provide, in order to determine if somebody is a criminal or somebody is not, if the laws are being applied correctly or not. So due process is not a triviality. It's not just something we add on. It's not just like icing on the cake. It is part of the cake. There is no justice without due process. There is no justice without the opportunity for the accused to defend themselves. There is no justice without evidence being presented that somebody is really guilty. And indeed, our justice system is built on the idea that you're innocent until proven guilty. Not here. Here you're shipped off to a El Salvadorian jail, not even to an American jail, where maybe at some point there'll be some due process, and you can face the court. No, it's an El Salvadorian jail where we know there is no justice or due process. The horror of it. The country that stands for, or has stood for, the rule of law, the idea of innocence until proven guilty, the idea of justice, of due process, the idea that the United States, on a presidential whim, would abandon due process and not care, be frivolous about guilt or innocence, about the appropriateness of a sentence or not a sentence. Send them for life in prison in El Salvadorian jail. What the hell? It'll make America safe again. I mean, indeed, we can round up all young males in America, send them to El Salvador, and America will be a lot less violent. Why stop with illegal immigrants? We could do it with citizens as well. Our jails, we're too loose and we let them out too early. Send them to El Salvador. They can keep them for good. So, this, first of all, the application of the Alien Enemies Act, completely inappropriate, completely out of context, I think ultimately unconstitutional. Congress has not declared war. I think, and again, I'm not a legal scholar, Alien Enemies Act requires a declaration of war. There is no declaration of war. Anyway, a judge. Oh, by the way, just to add to this. So, when was this? This was yesterday. So yesterday, somebody, Valentin Gomez, who is is a MAGA. She's an immigrant, but she's a MAGA influencer who's really bad. Anyway, she says, in response to some tweet by Bukele, she says, the U.S. should just follow what you did in El Salvador. Impeach all corrupt judges, lock up the criminals, investigate politicians. So we should just be a fascist nation. Now, you know, you could read this positively, like impeach all corrupt judges, but what do they mean by corruption? Judges who rule in a way that you don't like. That's what Bukele did. That's what MAGA is demanding happen now. That's what Trump is demanding. We'll get to that. So first of all, clear out the judicial, all these judges, you know, adhering to a constitution. That's irrelevant. The will of the people has been expressed through Donald Trump. He should be able to do whatever he wants. He was elected. That's democracy. What is it about this constitutional stuff and this separation of powers in the judiciary that can stop or should be able to stop the elected representative of the people, Donald Trump, from doing whatever the hell he wants? So get rid of the judges who won't accept this. And then just lock up the criminals. And don't bother, by the way, with due process. Bukele didn't. She said, we should follow what you did in El Salvador. Don't worry about due process. Just lock, they have a tattoo. In prison they go. We'll worry about due process maybe later if we get around to it. And then we should investigate the politicians because many of them are corrupt as well. Why are they corrupt? Because they don't agree with us. They obviously, if they don't agree with us, they must have an agenda. They must be corrupt. And therefore, lock them up. Investigate them. That's exactly what Bukele did. That's exactly what fascists do. That's what Viktor Orban did in Hungary. Get rid of the judges. Investigate politicians. And he also added, you know, basically make sure the media is all run by your friends. This is a 100% fascist recipe. Now, if all that had happened is Valentina Gomez had tweeted this, I would have said, yeah, she's a wacko. Who cares? She's a nobody. She does have 410,000 followers, and not accidentally the first thing in her descriptive on Twitter is Christ is King. She is a real piece of work. But, okay, that's just Valentina Gomez. Who cares, right? 410,000 people, but not me, right? But then, the kicker on this is Elon Musk then retweets it with the comment, it is the only way. And this is where we are today. The second most powerful man in America today. The second most powerful man in America today thinks the only way to move America forward is to embrace fascism, is to embrace fascist way of dealing with those you don't agree with. It's just impeach all the judges who rule against us. Let's just, round up everybody who we view as criminals, to hell with due process, and let's investigate the politicians of the other party, of course. Our party, they're never corrupt. So, we are clearly here talking about not just some wacky person in MAGA, but Elon Musk. Now, a judge ruled that to halt the deportations, on the basis of due process, on the basis of the appropriateness, I think, of the Alien Enemies Act. And he also ordered that the planes that were already in the air on the way to El Salvador be turned around and brought back to the United States. The Trump administration decided to ignore the judge and let the planes land in El Salvador and the people be processed into El Salvadorian jails. That has already happened. And MAGA is now flipping out over this judge who dared stop deportation with no due process and based on a questionable executive order. This is what Trump posted after the judge made this decision. This radical left lunatic, all capitalized, of a judge, a troublemaker and agitator, who was sadly appointed by Barack Hussein Obama, was not elected president. He didn't win the popular vote by a lot. He won by a small margin. He didn't win all 7 swing states. He didn't win 2,750 to 525 counties. He didn't win anything. I won, all caps, all this is all caps, for many reasons, in an overwhelming mandate, BS. But fighting illegal immigrants, immigration may have been the #1 reason for this historic victory. Now, no caps. I am just doing what the voters wanted me to do. This judge, like many of the crooked judges I am forced to appear before, should be, all caps, impeached. We don't want vicious, violent, and demented criminals, many of them deranged murderers in our country. Make America great again. He posted this. Of course, Elon Musk reposted, said this was essential. When a judge rules against you, the attitude should be to impeach. Now, it's true that if a judge is capricious, shows persistent bad faith, has wild rulings, completely inappropriate, or is fundamentally corrupt, gets bribes and stuff like that, then that is a good situation in which you should consider impeachment. But none of this is true in this case. The judge is doing what judges do. They're saying to the government, to the executive branch, you're doing things outside of the law. You're not acting appropriately. You're violating the law. Or at least saying to them, stop, pause. This needs to be reviewed. And we have a process for this. Judges often do this, and they're wrong. And when they are appellate courts, and ultimately there's a Supreme Court to figure this out. But no, dump the American system. What we should do is every time a judge rules against us, we should just impeach him. Now, note that most of this is just theater. It's performative. Even if the House impeaches, there's no way you get 2/3 of the Senate voting to prosecute such a judge and kick him out. This is all meant as theater to express the disdain, the disgust that the executive branch, Republicans, MAGA, now have for the judiciary. And the fear is that this is all to prepare us for Donald Trump basically saying, I don't care what the Supreme Court said. They weren't voted. They didn't win an election. They didn't get a mandate. They didn't get all 7 swing states. Who are they to tell the president what he can and cannot do? I mean, this is the thing that irks Trump. And this is what makes him such a he loves Putin so much. What irks Trump is that he can't just make a proclamation and have it done. He is just destroyed by the idea that other branches of the government can overturn his decisions, that people can say no to him. I mean, he is upset that generals and other parts of the administration, Justice Department, actually swear allegiance to the Constitution when in every other country that he admires, they swear allegiance to their boss, to the authoritarian in charge, to Putin, to Xi. And yet, with Trump, they don't even swear allegiance to him. And yet, the thing he values the most is personal loyalty. That's all he cares about. So Trump is really upset by this fact. He wants to be able to do whatever the hell he wants to do. Now, MAGA is upset because what is happening is that the people who are trying to stop the various things that the Trump administration is doing through the courts are going to liberal judges appointed by Obama or Biden to oppose, with the hope that those judges will rule against Trump. So they're really upset by, what is it? Judge shopping or whatever they call it. Well, but this is hilarious coming from MAGA and the right. I mean, throughout Biden's 4 years, MAGA ran to the same district court judge in Texas in order to get injunctions on, oral contraceptions, on abortions, on all these kind of things, because they knew that he would rule for them. And then the Biden administration waited for these things to go through the court system, and ultimately Supreme Court ruled one way or another. But they ran to the same judges constantly, who they knew. So these people invented judge shopping. Now they're upset it's being used against them. Tough. It's exactly what you did. I mean, this is White House Press Secretary. This is what she said. It's incredibly apparent that there is a concerted effort by the far left to judge shop, to pick judges who are clearly acting as partisan activists from the bench in an attempt to derail this president's agenda. And there's no question that's happening, just as the right did the same thing to Biden. Hypocrisy is too nice of a word for this kind of insanity. Anyway, it's gotten so bad that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court has intervened. He tweeted after Trump tweeted. He put out. I don't think he tweeted. I think he put out a statement. Quote: for more than 2 centuries, more than 200 years, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. Notice no all caps. This is why, he's not making a bigger splash. It's the all caps that make a difference. But that's exactly right. Good for Chief Justice Robert. Now, note also that a Chief Justice almost never does this. Like, it's really, really rare for a Chief Justice to get himself into the middle of a dispute, like political dispute like this. But he recognizes, I think, appropriately, that the very independence the very legitimacy of the courts, which means the very legitimacy of our political system is at stake here. Now, again, Trump's behavior here, Trump's diminishing of the courts, this is far worse than any particular thing Biden or Harris could have done or did do. Because it undermines the very system, the very nature of our government, and the very process by which justice is adjudicated. This kind of behavior, this kind of attitude towards our legal system, and its consequences, sending people to jail in El Salvador with no recourse, this is what made Trump worse. Yeah, he's better on regulation. Yeah, he's better on taxes. But on the American system of government, he's much, much worse. January 6th was first evidence of that. Much of his behavior during his first term was evidence of that. And now we have it in spades. It's as bad as I told you it would be, maybe worse than I thought it would be. Certainly faster. So, the real risks here, are not just our individual liberty and in the short run, and particularly to those of you who might have the wrong skin color, or to those of you who might not be, holding American passports. But the risk goes beyond that. It goes to the very nature of the American government. And remember, anything the right does to undermine the rule of law, anything the right does to undermine and basically make null and void the Constitution, the left will take advantage of. There will be a leftist president one of these days. There will be a swing to the left. And then what? Now, I'm not sure. Maybe there will never be a swing to the left, maybe because, the right is not going to guarantee that they're going to get elected. I don't know. But it is scary. Scary times. Scary times. All right. Let's see. This is a quick story, but it is so insane and so absurd. And again, this is the kind of crazy insanity that makes this administration so much worse. mRNA, the technology of mRNA, was awarded a Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine in 2023, and justifiably so. It is a revolutionary way to create vaccines, or to get the body's immune system to fight particular pathogens, particular enemies. Not only was mRNA incredibly effective when it came to COVID, and could be incredibly effective when it comes to viruses in the future, and our lives might depend on it if a virus more deadly, significantly more deadly than COVID comes about, we might rely on mRNA vaccines to save our lives. But mRNA has the potential, and has been shown to have significant potential in curing cancer, in fighting cancer. It basically programs the body to fight the cancer itself. It treats the cancer cells as if they are enemy viruses and guides the body to fight them. These are amazing, and there's been massive progress in this in the last few years since COVID. The one silver lining coming out of COVID has really been the intense and increased research into mRNA, the potential use of mRNA vaccines for all kinds of things, including cancer. And preliminary results are incredibly positive and incredibly promising. Well, it seems like the Trump administration is now telling scientists to take out all references to mRNA research when they apply for grants. Now, this shouldn't be super surprising, given that the head of Health and Human Services is a vaccine anti-vax. I was going to say vaccine skeptic, but he's much more than that. He's an anti-vax advocate. Somebody, an anti-science Health and Human Services head. Somebody who hates mRNA, hated the COVID vaccine, constantly talks about helps spread the falsehoods regarding supposed deaths as a consequence of COVID vaccines. So this is just, I don't know. This is just, it's super upsetting, depressing. You guys are, maybe most of you are young, but all of you should be concerned about the fact that medical science, which is on the verge of major breakthroughs with regard to cancer, which kills a significant number of people every year, and here we are on the verge of having a cure. The Trump administration is going to stop this. Here's a senior official at the National Cancer Institute confirmed that NIH, National Institute for Health, acting director, sent an email across the NIH instructing that any grants, contracts, or collaborations involving mRNA vaccines be reported to the chain, up the chain, to the Health and Human Services Secretary RFK's office and the White House. The left is being accused for a very long time as being anti-science because of climate change. But the right, stem cells, and now this. I mean, of course, RFK is of the left. So, it's hard to tell what left and right mean anymore. But the irrational, anti-science positioning of within the American people is now governing us. Again, this is a sense in which these people are really, really, really bad. All right, let me just clarify something that's going on in the chat. Ayn Rand said that the Constitution could be modified and improved. I have said, I did a show on how the Constitution could be improved. That does not mean that a president could just ignore the Constitution as it's written. Quite the contrary. The rule of law demands that the Constitution be followed, and indeed to the letter, even if it's flawed. Even if it's flawed. The idea that a president or a judge or Congress can just make it up as they go along, redraw the Constitution as they see fit, is anti-liberty and anti-freedom and anti the rule of law. It is the negation of the rule of law. It is the establishment of complete subjective law. Whatever. It turns us into a democracy, the worst kind of democracy, a majority rule democracy, or an authoritarian state where the president just makes it up as he goes along because Yaron said, hey, He could do the Constitution better, so let's ignore the Constitution completely. Now, add to that the fact that the way in which they want to change the Constitution or ignore the Constitution is the exact opposite of what Ayn Rand and I'm putting myself in the same sentence as Ayn Rand, but the exact opposite of how we would fix the Constitution. We would make it even more difficult to do the crazy, nutty, stupid things that this administration wants to do by ignoring the Constitution. Our changes to the Constitution would move us in exactly opposite direction of the way Donald Trump wants to move us, or the way any random judge would want to move us. So, God, if you interpreted my willingness to say that the Constitution could be better as an opening to presidents doing whatever the hell they want and ignoring the Constitution, you are, I don't know, not very smart, because clearly that's not what I intended, and completely leaving open this country to becoming an authoritarian state. That's what you want. That's what you're seeking at the end of the day. But that's, I mean, Trump, King Trump, that's King Trump, Emperor Trump, Caesar Trump, whatever you want to call him. That's what he'd like to be. Putin Trump, authoritarian Trump. That's what he wants to be. Don't use my words or Ayn Rand's words to give him any semblance of legitimacy for any of that. John Smith, you can have a monarchy. I understand Saudi Arabia is accepting people. You can go and live in Saudi Arabia, where there's a king. You can have your king. Monarchies are a barbaric remnant of a horrific past. And it is Western civilization, or what makes Western civilization, and the essence of Western civilization is partially, to a large extent, the rejection of monarchy and everything it stands for. There can be no flexibility around the Constitution. Nothing, nada. It needs to be interpreted in the context of individual rights. That's it. And you do the best that you can with the Constitution as it is. But who the hell wants the courts of today, or the president of today, or Congress of today to be flexible with the Constitution when all of them have no understanding of the Founding Fathers, no understanding of the principles on which it is based? Just stick to the document. In the world in which we live right now, stick to the document with the best understanding you have of individual rights. But they're moving everything they do. And everything they do, remember, is making the flaws bigger, worse. Everything they do is more statist, more collectivist, more authoritarian, when all the changes I want are to make it less statist, less authoritarian. It's bizarre. Flexible. Yeah, flexible means authoritarian. Whatever the president wants. We're flexible. We don't need a rule of law. We're flexible. We don't need due process. We're going to be flexible. All right. Insanity everywhere, even on my chat. All right, let's see. So mRNA vaccines are now on the chopping block. This is a pro-science administration. Isn't that great? Yesterday, Donald Trump had a schedule called with Putin to talk about Ukraine's surrender to Russia. To talk about a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia, because Trump is going to bring peace to the world, to the Middle East, to wherever. Anyway, the first thing you saw about that phone call was kind of funny, because Basically, Trump was put on hold while Putin finished remarks he had at some conference. And when he was told, you're going to be late for your call with Trump, he basically said, let him wait. So, you know the hierarchy by who waits for whom. Putin doesn't give a damn. Putin looks down on Trump. Trump is Putin's plaything. So anyway, they got on the phone and they chatted. And of course, Donald Trump came out and said, it was the best phone call in history. This was an amazing phone call. Putin is committed to a ceasefire. Supposedly, they talked about a temporary, limited ceasefire where both parties stop bombing infrastructure and energy projects. Putin refused to accept a complete ceasefire, but he agreed to this. Of course, as soon as the agreement was done, Putin launched a massive attack by drone and missile on Ukraine, including its energy infrastructure. So much for the deal. Now, supposedly, it was too late to cancel the attack. It had already started. We'll see in the days to come whether Russia sticks to a no energy facilities, no infrastructure agreement in terms of a ceasefire. Putin did say he was willing to have a complete ceasefire. He's always willing. He's always, he's never the reason why there's no peace and no ceasefire. He's willing to do it. But in order to do that, he is insisting that during the ceasefire, the Ukrainian army does not mobilize any new troops, does not train, and does not receive any weapons from the West. Now, he didn't mention whether Russia would shut down its industry, the producing tanks and weapon systems for the Russian military. He didn't mention whether the Russian army would stop training or recruiting new people. It's just Ukraine couldn't do all those things. So he demanded that Ukraine stop mobilizing, recruiting, and training forces. All foreign military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine need to be suspended. Of course, there's a precedent for that. That the United States didn't, stop intelligence sharing and stop providing aid for a few days, a week or so ago. It was not discussed. Of course, Trump is not fast enough or smart enough to bring up whether all aid and military support from North Korea and China would stop, and Iran, of course, would stop for Russia. That was not discussed because Trump is not the guy who led this talk. In addition, Putin wants a commitment that it would be Russia and the United States who will negotiate a peace settlement in a bilateral mode, no role for Ukraine, no role for Europe, all future negotiations, Trump and Putin, because Putin knows he can get away with murder. He has Trump under his control. Putin just wants more concessions before any negotiation even starts. I mean, Trump has already given him everything he wants, most of what he wants. And ultimately, Putin wants and will demand and will not compromise on the idea of removing a legitimate government in Ukraine and weakening the Ukrainian military so it cannot stand up against Russian aggression. And, of course, annexing all the territories that Russia wants. And I don't see how Trump stands up and stops him. I just don't see Trump standing up to Putin on anything. Today, Trump had a phone call with Zelensky, which Trump called very good, very good. I wonder if Zelensky think it was very good. We will see. We will see what happens. Supposedly more negotiations are going to happen between the Russians and the Americans in Saudi Arabia, a great location, in the future. As Zelensky points out, Putin's words are at odds almost always with reality. He cannot be trusted. He cannot be believed. And yet the Trump administration is falling all over themselves to express that they completely trust Putin. Witkoff, the emissary, the Trump emissary, quote, "I tend to believe that President Putin is operating in good faith." Of course. And, Trump is nothing but positive, nice words about the Russians. Anyway, this is how Medvedev is the former president of Russia. Putin, for a while there, played with the idea of him not being dictator for life, and he had Medvedev fill in for him. He changed his mind and kicked Medvedev down, and he became prime minister. So, but Medvedev has always been a partner of Putin's and a mouthpiece of Putin's. Now, it was a little bit independent about 15 years ago, but abandoned that very quickly once he understood how things work in Putin's Russia. Anyway, this is what Medvedev said about the phone call. I think this is about the best summation of the phone call one could imagine. The phone call between President Putin and Trump proved a well-known idea. There was only Russia and America in the dining room. On the menu, light appetizers, Brussels sprouts, British fish and chips, and Paris rooster. The main course is a Kiev-style cutlet. Enjoy your meal. In other words, Medvedev is saying, he's kind of repeating something Trump said before the phone call. They're basically meeting to divvy up Europe, to figure out who gets what. I mean, yeah, maybe at the end of the day, Putin gives Trump Brussels and Britain and maybe even Paris. But he's going to demand a big chunk of Ukraine, and maybe in exchange, he could sign a minerals deal with Trump. But basically, this is all about divvying up, the sphere of influence. And Russia wants Europe. Certainly, it wants Eastern Europe. And the United States maybe can have Western Europe. But there's no role for Ukraine. There's no role for European independence. There's no role for European voice. This is basically for the United States and Russia to divvy up. And Putin knows this. Putin knows this, the agenda. I suspect Trump does not exactly. Or maybe he does. I'm not sure he's smart enough to know that that's on the agenda. But that's basically what, is going on here. It's Putin getting Trump to agree to giving Eastern Europe to the Russian sphere of influence. Here is what Russian philosopher, you remember Alexander Dugin? Did a show on Dugin a while back. This is what Dugin said about Trump, right? He just wrote a book, by the way. His latest book is called The Trump Revolution. So this is Dugin about, is Trump closer to Putin than he is to the West, to Western Europe? Is Trump much closer to Putin than to America's traditional allies? And this is Dugin, quote, "Yes, it's so. I agree that it's obvious. He is much more conservative. He is in favor of traditional values. He is in favor of patriotism, of the nation. And I define that as a great powers world order. Putin and Trump coincide in accepting this model instead of liberal globalism. So yeah, Putin, Trump, they view the world in a very similar way, a collectivist, imperialist almost way. It explains Trump's constant talk about Greenland and Canada and annexing and taking over and so on. All right, let's see what we have. Let me just say something about the comments on board. This is to you, Edward. Edward, you're way too dominant on the chat. I mean, there's something obsessive about you having to comment about everything that is said. Loosen up, or I'll block you from the chat. You know, just stop. Or you know, it's okay once in a while to comment like everybody else in this chat, but the constant flow is not particularly healthy for the chat itself, and you maybe not an indication of your own health. All right, Houthis. Houthis, yes, Houthis. So the United States, Trump basically said, we're going to wipe you out. You're not going to, we're going to crush you. We're going to annihilate you. We're going to... So yes, a couple of days ago, the United States bombed the most significant bombing I think the United States has done on the Houthis, more than Biden did. And my chat is not a monarchy. My chat is private property. There's a big difference between monarchy and private property. Don't bring your stupid, what's his name? Yarvin, nonsensical, just shallow, uninteresting, intellectual garbage to my chat. So no, chat is not. This is private property. My chat. And monarchy is not private property. So Yarvin is just superficial and lazy intellectually. It's not thinking. And Yarvin is garbage. I agree completely with Hoppian something. Now, I'm not sure we'll agree about Hoppe, but I don't know about Hoppian or whatever. So the U.S. struck. It's going to be interesting. After they struck, they sent a missile to Israel. They've attacked U.S. Navy ships. We will see what the United States continues to do. What they actually target, who they target, and whether Trump's red line, whether his threats, which with regard to Hamas have meant absolutely nothing, but with regard to, we'll see if they mean anything with regard to the Houthis. So far, mild toughness, nothing revolutionary, and certainly no, haven't intimidate them into actually stopping their aggression. Now, maybe it'll happen. Maybe I'm underestimating Trump's toughness when it comes to these things, but so far, okay, better than Biden, but not super impressive with regards to that. Talk about not super impressive, as I think you've probably seen in the news. Israel has re-engaged in its campaign in Gaza to hopefully, or they promised us to wipe out Hamas. Hard to believe that is what they're going to do, and hard to believe that they actually, that they're serious this time, but we will see. First wave of bombing killed over 400 people, including a number of senior people within Hamas leadership, primarily its civilian leadership. They're going after now anybody who has any kind of political position in Hamas. And that is good. That I'm certainly all in favor with that. Today, Israel returned to fighting on the ground. It sent troops into the central Gaza to the the route that they had established that cut off north from south of Gaza. We'll see if they completely occupy that, the Netzarim, into Netzarim. We'll see if they resplit Gaza into north and south, or whether they just start moving in from the east. They also moved in from the south into areas of Rafah that they had evacuated in the past. All this in an effort supported by the Trump administration to, this is what Israel says, and this is what the Trump administration is saying, to get Hamas back to the negotiating table. At the end of the day, what matters is the deal. The deal. And all they care about is deals. Now, it is true that the Israeli government now has lost much of the support at home in Israel for renewed military operations without a release of the hostages. Hamas, of course, has no incentive to release the hostages unless it gets everything it wants. And if it releases all the hostages, it is terrified that then Israel will come in and wipe them out. Now they have the hostages to kind of lord over Israel with. So it is going to be interesting to see how this develops, whether indeed the pressure, the bombing, the ground incursion actually puts pressure on Hamas. It'll also be interesting to see whether Hamas will kill any of the hostages after as they have threatened they will do. It also is interesting to see how far the Trump administration will let Israel go in its push into the Gaza Strip without then shifting it to, again, negotiating and compromising and cutting a deal. I don't think Trump wants an Israeli victory. I think he's too beholden to the Saudis. I think he has to listen to the Saudis. Remember, all the negotiations going on right now are happening between the U.S. and Russia, are happening in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has a lot of leverage over the U.S., particularly over the Trump administration, who insists gas prices needs to be lower, needs Saudi cooperation for that. So we're going to see. But right now, the Israeli public seems to be pretty committed to getting the hostages out, while it wants to see Hamas neutralized. Not annihilated anymore. It was annihilated and finished. But I think Israelis saw the inability of the Israeli military to do that in the first year and 4 months of the war, and they've kind of given up on that. Now they just want the hostages back and punish Hamas and let's get out of there. Their big ambitions to actually eliminate Hamas as a political or military entity, that is gone, even from a lot of right-wingers. I mean, Israel is basically, in a sense, kind of accepted defeat. It is sad to watch. All right, just a few things on Germany. So yesterday, the German parliament passed this mammoth spending plan that would allow for up to $1 trillion in debt-fueled investment in defense and infrastructure over the next decade. The package amends the country's constitution to relax strict limits on debt and that have long set, the parameters for spending. The plan means a much more robust military, but also means spending a lot of other stuff, spending on infrastructure and climate change and all kind of other stuff. And what this really represents is an attempt by Germany. Well, the positive is to beef up its military, but the negative is this is really an attempt by Germany to ramp up GDP factors in government spending, without actually doing the kind of reforms the German economy needs. So if you followed the show, you know that German economy is in trouble. It is stagnant. It is shrinking. The auto industry is in huge trouble. But generally, German manufacturing is facing real competition and is really struggling. It's not keeping up technologically. It's not keeping up with the robots. Germany has no real established, growing, vibrant tech industry. It is being left behind. And as a consequence, the German economy is shrinking. Now, the solution to this is a free market reforms. A solution to this is deregulation, massive, significant deregulation. The solution to this is employment deregulation and business deregulation. A solution to this is a return to nuclear power. A solution to this is building natural gas facilities and more LNG. That is reducing the cost of energy in Germany. The solution is not to dramatically increase government spending, the size of government. This is the kind of government stimulus package that Japan tried for 30 years in order to try to get its economy going. It's the kind of stimulus package that Obama tried to get the U.S. economy going. It is not the way you create sustainable, long-term, healthy economic growth. Now, yes, the German government needs to spend more on the military, a lot more. But to do that, it should start cutting government spending in other areas. Instead of increasing its debt limit, like the United States does regularly and what they basically did by changing the Constitution, it should reduce the amount of regulation, reduce the amount of control, and beef up any way to enhance the private sector by shrinking government, getting government out of the way, and by reducing some of the German welfare state. Maybe that'll also make it less attractive for immigrants, which is something they're very concerned about. So what they've chosen is the Keynesian path, the path that governments usually choose instead of facing and doing what is necessary. This is going to be, really, 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 ultimately, long-term destructive to the German economy. While yes, enhancing the military, but that's not going to be enough. Germany has more problems than just a weak military. Okay, finally, quickly on BYD. BYD is, of course, the electric car company in China. BYD is the largest electric car company in the world. They have surpassed in sales, they've surpassed Tesla significantly, and they are dramatically growing market share and the number of cars they're selling, whereas Tesla is actually shrinking. BYD also announced, I think it was yesterday, that they now have a new line of electric charging stations and electric vehicles that can get a full charge in about as long as it takes you to fill your car with gasoline. In other words, a few minutes. As a consequence, the stock climbed 6% when in Hong Kong, where it's listed. It's now worth $162 billion, which is more than Ford, General Motors, Volkswagen combined. BYD's new battery and charging system was capable of providing around 400 kilometers on a charge in 5 minutes. 5 minutes, which is dramatic improvement over existing technology. Now, you don't have to worry, people. You will not be exposed to BYDs. You will not have the choice of buying this better and cheaper technology. Trump is not going to allow them to sell the car in the United States. So don't worry, you will get stuck with older tech, with less effective tech, with cars that charge slowly and can only go 250 kilometers, not 400 kilometers. So don't worry. You don't want all this Chinese competition. And as the president's economic advisors keep telling us, we should stop being obsessed by cheap stuff. The American dream is not about getting cheap, high-quality stuff. The American dream is not about that. I'm not sure what the American dream is about, but it's not about that. I guess it's about the common good and doing away with procedural justice, right? Trump is going to make sure that Chinese car makers are out of the United States. Also in Europe, they've raised tariffs dramatically on electric cars, but the reality is that the rest of the world, Asia, Africa, South America, basically, you're going to see them crammed with inexpensive, compact crossovers, SUVs made by companies like BYD, Chery Automobile Company, SAIC Motor Company. These are companies that are making good cars. You can make fun of them, cheap, but BYD makes good cars that are basically significantly cheaper than what's being made in the West and are basically taking over the world. Increasingly, American and European car makers cannot compete. They just are inefficient, unproductive. I mean, for a long time, American automobiles couldn't compete with the Japanese. Now, they have even a bigger rival, the Chinese. And instead of actually encouraging competition, we will instead seal off our borders, make it impossible for Chinese electric vehicles to be sold in America, so that you are forced to buy American or European, although April 2nd, you might find that your European car now has a 25% tariff, as well as your Japanese car has a 25% tariff. Right now, China exports more cars than any other country, but it's also building factories. Like BYD has factories now in Brazil and other places around Asia, and in other places around Latin America. You will soon see Chinese cars basically dominate the world, with the exception of the West that'll hang on to our inferior legacy automobiles because, God forbid, we buy cheap stuff. So, don't worry. Donald Trump and the governments of Canada and Europe are protecting you from those evil, evil, evil Chinese car manufacturers and those evil, evil, evil Chinese cars. Who would want to drive a Chinese car? Insane. All right, that is the news for Wednesday, March 19th. In the 1980s with Japanese cars, they put quotas on. We still could get them, but not enough of them because Ronald Reagan wanted to protect American car companies. Same story over and over again. This time they're banned completely. And what happened was that the Japanese started building the cars in the United States in order to get around the quotas. I don't think Trump will allow Chinese companies to build Chinese cars in the United States. So I don't think that'll happen. So I don't think we'll get the same story as we did with the Japanese cars. It won't be as good. All right, a few reminders. A reminder to ask questions in the Super Chat. It's a way to support the show. This is a listener-supported show. So come to the Super Chat, support the show. If not, use a sticker. We are doing okay. We're in the second hour, and we've funded the first hour. Every hour is $250. So We're on our way, hopefully, to funding the second hour, so please help get us there. We still have a way to go. $162 to get to our second hour goal. So please consider supporting the show and getting us there. Those of you who'd like to support the show on a regular basis, monthly basis, which is my preferred method, please go to patreon.com, Yaron Brook Show, and make a contribution. Any amount is great. A wide range of amounts that people do, from $2 a month to $1,000 a month. It's all good. So please consider doing that. I remind you to go check out Alex Epstein. Alex Epstein is the world expert on fossil fuels, environmentalism, climate change, energy, and writes these amazing Substack posts on what is going on in the energy field right now. A lot of positives going on. The one area in this administration that seems to be all positive is energy. Alex writes about that. So if you want the good news about energy, go check out Alex. Also about deregulation, environmental deregulation that the EPA is doing. He had a post about that was excellent. So check out alexepstein.substack.com. Those of you who'd like to come to OCON and cannot afford it and are serious about studying objectivism, you can apply for a scholarship. AynRand.org/start here. AynRand.org/start here. OCON, just fantastic. It's a great experience. I think you will all enjoy. And let's see, what else do we want to say? Just again, a reminder of the Super Chat and a reminder of Patreon. Please remember, listener supported show. You guys make this show possible. Couldn't do it without you. But I need your support to keep it going. All right, let's see. Let's start with Tom, who put up, Tom put up British pounds, and that reminded me of Britain, reminded me of London, reminded me of the fact that I'm doing this seminar in London on March 29th. Seminar, London, March 29th. It's £250. The seminar is on how to be a rational egoist, how to apply rational egoism to relationships, to love, to careers, to living your life. It'll be 4 hours. It'll be a small group. We're up to 10 or 11 right now. I'm capping it at 14. 14 people is capped. So there's basically 3 spaces left. Three. So sign up now. Sign up today. Go to yaronbrookshow.com. Scroll down to the list of events. March 29th. And there's how to register right there. You can register through PayPal. And if you can't, for some reason, use that, it doesn't work for you, email me, Yaron Brook Show, and we'll find other mechanisms. But yeah, you should consider it. 4 hours. We'll chat. We'll talk about the issues you want to talk about. We'll, I think it'll be a good time. And we'll talk about what it means to be an egoist and how to apply it in your life. Again, it'll be a small group, 14 people at most. Right now we are, 11, I think. So 3 more people. Limited. The sooner you get it done, the sooner. Yeah, that's the only way to guarantee that you're in is by getting it done. All right. And don't forget to like the show before you leave. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe to the show. Now, press the subscribe button. All right, Tom says, what's your take on the new left-wing abundance movement focused on progress, building more housing and infrastructure, deregulation rather than redistribution, led by people like Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson? Might be a good show topic. Yeah, I want to read the book. I haven't read it, but I did watch parts of their interview with Barry Weiss. And look, I wouldn't call them rather than redistribution. They want to continue redistribution. They want to enhance redistribution. But what they're focusing on here is deregulation. Deregulation primarily when it comes to housing. But they also want more, for example, government investment in science. And they also want more government investment in growth, in progress. So they would like to see more things like the CHIPS Act and elements of the Inflation Reduction Act, which incentivized manufacturing production in the United States, incentivized a focus on tech and on growth and things like that. So while I think this is where the left should be, I talked about this, by the way, in the last show. While I think this is where a healthier left would be, they're not going to give up on redistribution. They want to help the poor, fine. But they're also pro-growth, pro-industry, pro-technology, pro-science, pro-economic success. And they want to focus on that. And the good thing about Klein and Thompson is they realize that deregulation is essential for that. And in my view, deregulation is the most important thing. The problem, of course, is that because they come at it from a collectivistic perspective, which the right does too. The right does too. God, I'm reading this book by the CEO of Plantier. It's scary collectivist. He's a right-wing supporter of Trump. Scary collectivistic. Anyway, they are collectivists. So they come out at it from a collectivist perspective. And they come at it from the perspective of, and again, so does the right, that the government can centrally plan abundance, progress. So they haven't learned. They haven't learned the economics of it. But more importantly, it's the political philosophy. They haven't been willing to abandon the political philosophy of collectivism, of central planning. They haven't, and neither is the right, embraced individualism, which is the only basis for real progress movement, for real movement towards greater abundance. However, this is a much, much better left than woke, DI-focused left. This is at least a left that will do some good, deregulation, and some things wasteful, and some things that are bad, but given the structure of our government, the least bad you could do, which is huge investment in science. And even if they just deregulated housing and infrastructure and got more stuff built and more civil engineering projects done and more housing and more building, just lowering the cost of housing would be phenomenal and would raise the quality and standard of living of Americans significantly. So this is a much better left. And this is a kind of left that, given the nature of the right today, you could even, and I hold your nose and vote for. But it's still a completely wrong left, a completely wrong political ideology. It's a political ideology of collectivism. It's better because it embraces a little bit more freedom because it recognizes that private markets are beneficial, but it is still corrupt and dangerous and bad and a long way from where we need to be. But I'll take this left over the new old left, the old new left or whatever, the hippie left or the woke left or whatever you want to call it any day. Any day. So generally a positive movement on the American scene. Now we need a right that is committed to abundance rather than a right that seems to be committed right now to raising prices on Americans, all in the name of bringing manufacturing back to America, which is complete garbage and nonsense. Wes, thank you for the $50 sticker. Thank you, Wes. That got us a little closer. We are now only $42 short of our 2-hour goal. So $42 over the next half hour. It's very, very, very doable. So please consider doing a couple of $20 questions and we're there. Remo, who asked a $60 question. Thoughts on the concept of forgiveness? When is it in your self-interest? When isn't it, etc.? By the way, I had an amazing time at AynRandCon Berlin, but I still felt as if I was missing someone. Yeah, as you should have. I hope you told everybody there that you were missing someone. I missed you guys, so I wish I was there next time. I'm told I will probably be invited to next time. So hopefully next year. Let's see. Forgiveness. So forgiveness is selfish if it is consistent with the virtue of justice. If you're forgiving for a reason, because the person who sinned against you has apologized, and depending on the extent of what they did against you, has both apologized, expressed a real understanding of what it is they did wrong, and made recompense. And of course, the bigger the action against you was, the more the recompense needs to be. And then you have to really think about, is forgiveness in your interest? That is, what value does it serve? Is this relationship worth saving? Even if they've said sorry, even if they understood what they did wrong, do you trust this person? Is it, you could forgive them, but then not return to the old relationship you had? The various forms of forgiveness. So I think it really has to do with how sincere their apology is and how much they're willing to make amends and recompense. Have they earned the forgiveness? Do they deserve the forgiveness? That basically is the standard. But it's not like not forgiving somebody hurts you. I think not forgiving somebody is often appropriate when they haven't done those things, when there's nothing to be gained by forgiveness. Forgiveness in and of itself is not a virtue. It's very much just an application of justice that has to be earned, just like anything within justice has to be earned. And there's certain sins, there's certain things that people might do to you that you should never forgive, no matter what. I don't know. I see sometimes these trials where somebody has murdered a child and the parents will be there and they will express forgiveness. No way. No way. There's just, murder is unforgivable. In many respects, deep dishonesty is unforgivable. There's a bunch of things that is just unforgivable. And to forgive is to reject one's own values. To forgive in those cases, it's humility. It's the opposite of pride. It's to negate oneself. By negating one's own values, it is self-destructive to self-esteem and self-destructive to who and what you are as a human being. So forgiveness is definitely not mandatory. It needs to be earned. And some things you can't bring back. A life, for example, cannot be brought back. Violent crime is unforgivable. So yeah, I'm big on not forgiving certain things. John says, you should watch Veritasium video on becoming viral on YouTube. Long story short, improve your titles and thumbnails to be more clickbait. The quality of your content won't matter if the cover is boring and monotonous. But my, I don't think my covers are boring and monotonous. I mean, the thumbnails that go up after the show are usually clickbaitable. They're usually provocative. They're not repeatable. They're different. Every one of them is different. So I get it. And a lot of the short videos I put out, a lot of the shorts I put out, all have clickbaitable titles and provocative titles. And it hasn't seemed to have made much difference. All right. Ryan, like and share the show, Ryan says. Yeah, like and share the show, guys. Like. Press that like button. It doesn't cost you anything. 150 people watching right now. We should have 300 likes because people have gone in and out. And 85. It should be well over 100 likes. It doesn't cost you anything to like the show, and it helps the algorithm a lot. It helps me with the algorithm a lot. So please consider doing it. Why is that so hard? Unless you don't like the show, and then I get it. But can't believe that it's that many don't like the show, but they stay and listen. Michael says, how did Charlie Kirk first discover you? I don't remember. He discovered Ayn Rand in high school, and then he started, and I guess there was some mutual acquaintance introduced us. We met at a coffee shop in Chicago when he was still a high school student, and he was just started Turning Point as a high school program. This is before it became the kind of college program and big movement that it is today. And after that, he was already watching my videos back then. So I think it's because he discovered Ayn Rand, he then did the search and found stuff and found my videos online. Michael says, did you see Arnold Schwarzenegger going after Trump over his press conference with Putin? Pretty good. The Terminator still has some balls. Yeah, I mean, he was a terrible governor of California, but of course not as bad as Newsom. He has no real principles. He's certainly no free market. He's flawed. Schwarzenegger is flawed. But he gets that Trump is a disaster. He gets the evil that is Trump. And in that sense, good for him. When Republicans are afraid to criticize, I was going to say Putin, which they are, when they're afraid to criticize Trump, who's like Putin, Schwarzenegger at least has no fear, and good for him. That Doodle Bunny, the left is burning Teslas while Elon is saving humans stranded in space. The left is burning Teslas. That's awful. That is, a destruction of private property that is just disgusting. It's leftist nihilists who can only express themselves in forms of violence. So that is horrifically condemnable. Elon saved humans, but they weren't stranded in space. This is buying into a stupid Elon Musk and Donald Trump line, which is just not true. It takes 2 seconds to figure it out. They weren't stranded in space. They were purposefully left in space because there was too much risk for their spaceship to come back. They were worried about Boeing. There was a deal with SpaceX to bring them back, and the deal was to bring them back now. So everybody knew when they were coming back. I remember when they had to be left in the space station, that they said they won't be picked up again until March. And I was like, why is that? Why don't they send up somebody to pick them up now? But they were. This was not anything like that. This was not stranded. This was the plan. Not a good plan in my view, but the plan all along. Not your average algorithm. It is a travesty that all the live free or die flags on people's homes are in the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire. They should be in the middle of New York City and Silicon Valley. Yes, live free or die. Live free so I can live a mediocre, nothing life. But the people who actually are living productive, creative, ambitious lives are the ones who don't appreciate freedom. But it's also true that almost nobody understands what freedom actually is and what it means. This country is upside down in so many ways. Liam, mass deportations are taking a wrecking ball to due process like never before. Absolutely. Wrecking ball to due process, rule of law. They're rounding up people who are not illegals. Even if they ultimately release them, the fact that you rounded up based on what? The government should have The government should have a reason to incarcerate you, to arrest you, to round you up. And the fact that you don't have a driver's license on you, the fact that you don't have a passport on you, it's not a reason. Indeed, the government shouldn't have a right to ask you about your driver's license without a reason. Color of skin is a reason. We've gone a long way from the backlash against the sheriff from Arizona stopping Hispanics and asking for a driver's license in order to catch illegals to a big net just sweeping through the country and, rounding up people with on no basis, on the basis of nothing. And in the process, rounding up people who are citizens or people who are legally in the country. This mass deportation is horrific. It's not as big, not as massive, and not as horrific as it could be, but they're just getting started. They're just getting started. They're building up the resources to do it more. Clark, did Kant primarily want to save faith or altruism? Primarily wanted to save religion. And I think, ultimately, I don't know if it was more the faith or the altruism of religion, probably both. But he managed to save both, right? He wanted to save faith from reason, right? And of course, by divorcing reason from reality, he achieves that. And then he clearly wants to save altruism from any kind of, from the Enlightenment attack on it and modest attack on it. And an era which saw a lot of people kind of living a self-interested life because he spends a lot of time in his ethics attacking the idea of self-interest, attacking the idea of happiness, attacking the idea of individual values. So both. Michael, do you think more and more Republicans are secretly turning against Trump? They know he's nuts and are too afraid to say anything. Yeah, I think that's right. But I think that has been happening for years, and yet they haven't done anything about it, so they still stay silent. But yes, I think more and more, as he shows himself to be crazier and crazier, there's more and more of that. Ryan, what is your take on Geert Wilders? Is he a defender of the West or just anti-Islamists? I suspect he's mostly anti-Islamists. I haven't heard him articulate a positive defense of the West. He doesn't strike me as really having the intellectual tools to be able to do that effectively. So I think he's primarily an anti-Islamist. Again, I could be mistaken, but that's my impression from what I've heard of him. Hopper, I know this hasn't been studied because we've never been this rich in human history, but maybe once societies achieve certain wealth levels, they can't revert. They can't revert to tyranny. I don't see why that is the case. I just don't see the logic of that. I don't see the logic of that. It's very easy to destroy wealth. Look at Venezuela. Look at other countries. Now, granted, America is more wealthy than Venezuela ever was, but wealth can be destroyed. I don't see what it is that it is deterministic. And the idea of can't ever, can't revert. What is so deterministic about that wealth prevents tyranny? It could be that wealth slows down tyranny, makes tyranny less likely, but can't is that I can confidently say is not true. Because there's nothing deterministic in history. History is not deterministic. And it certainly looks like the United States is heading in that direction. Esoteric Dichotomy, hey, Yaron, checking in. Have you experimented with AI yet? I have fallen in love using it for brainstorming fiction, personal goals, note-taking. I've experimented a little bit. I haven't fallen in love with it. And I tried to do it for news generation. And I found it, okay, another source of lists of news, no different than Google News or no different than some of the other sources I have for news. So I haven't found anything that really is regularly helpful for me. But I need to experiment more, granted. James, why do you believe thinking in principle is dogmatic? Why do people believe thinking in principle is dogmatic? Well, because they think of that is what dogma is. They think that dogma is rigid ideas that you follow no matter what, and they associate with principles. So they don't have the idea that knowledge is contextual. They don't understand the role of principles in thinking. They think principles just represent a particular dogma that you follow, a particular set of rules that you follow, without understanding the importance to their own thinking of being principled. It's pretty straightforward that they would think it. They also, a lot of people who claim to be principled are actually dogmatists. That is, they view their principles as dogma. That is, context doesn't matter to them. And they explain what they're doing in terms of dogma rather than explanation, rather than giving reasons and causes for what they're doing. James, Trump blatantly ignored a federal court blocking his deportation within the first 2 months of his presidency is ominous of coming dictatorship. Yeah, everything that's happening last few days, they call it impeach judges. They're ignoring court decisions, but they're basically attacking the judiciary the way they're attacking it. Now, Biden did this a little bit. Trump is elevating this dramatically. It all is bad news in terms of the future of freedom in America. Clark, is dark humor a form of nihilism? It strikes me as deeply immoral, anti-life humor, and it is everywhere. You're considered weak if you take offense at this type of humor. Yes, I think it is a form of nihilism. I think a lot of humor today is a form of nihilism where you make fun of the good, you ridicule everything, you're cynical about everything. There is a type of tearing everything down. Is a form of nihilism. Liam, how can Trump be a billionaire and a nihilist? Well, he can be compartmentalized. He can be a builder when it comes to his financial life and be a nihilist in his personal life. And this is why he sleeps with porn actresses, and a nihilist in his political life. So people are very compartmentalized. He can be compartmentalized. And people are not 100% anything, usually. If they were, you're like 100% altruist, they would all die. How can you be an altruist and a businessman and a billionaire? But they are. They feel guilty about having their billions. But they don't consistently apply their altruism. That's the case here. Michael, how in 30 to 50 years from now will a mindless American public outgrow MAGA? Hard to believe objectivism can cover that much ground in that period of time. I don't know that we will. You're supposed to be the optimist, Michael. I don't know that we will. I mean, that's exactly the point why it's so hard and so difficult to predict the future. It's a lot of ground to cover. It's a lot of people to convince. It's a lot of influence to gain. We know how you gain influence. You gain influence by dominating intellectual high ground. That's what we need to do. 30 to 50 years is a long time. But we need a lot of very, very high-quality intellectuals, and a lot of them. Numbers matter. And they need to be vocal and active and productive and all of that. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a battle. And we might not win it, not in the next 30 to 50 years. Liam, is Trump trying to get rid of the Department of Education because the religious right wants states to have greater ability to infuse religion in the classroom? I mean, that might be one of the reasons. I don't think it's the only one. I think generally the religious right, or call it Republicans. I saw a comment by, what's his name, DeSantis, saying that he was glad to see the Department of Education get rid of the Department of Education so that states could do more, so that he could impose his will more freely on education, whether that involves religion or whether that involves his attack on woke and other stuff, whether that involves him wanting the history curriculum to be the way he wants it. It's a step towards increasing the power of states to govern education. Of course, an alternative position, which some on the right have, is no, don't get rid of the Department of Education. Just use it. Instead of promoting a woke agenda, use it to promote a MAGA agenda. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Trump pivots to that position, because Trump doesn't have a strong belief about education department one way or another. All right, we are $79 short of our goal. Let's try to make the goal. $79 short. I think that's doable. Maybe, maybe not. We've only got 3 questions, so it would have to happen quickly. We're probably going to end before 6 Eastern time here. All right, Enric, should we oppose MAGA and its intellectuals' irrationality? If so, how to do this best? Well, it's the same. We oppose everything, right? Speak up, speak up, speak up. Debate, debate, debate. Discuss, discuss, discuss. Right. Get an opposition viewpoint out there. Criticize them. They get too much of a free ride. And often the criticism is from the left. Criticize them from the free market perspective. Criticize them from a founding fathers perspective. Criticize them from a constitutional individual rights perspective. Criticize them from a rational perspective. So criticize them in a way that differentiates you from the regular criticism they get from the left. But yes, we've got to elevate our game in terms of criticizing them and offering better solutions. Nevfell says, you said check your premise when I said I'm not becoming a member of your channel because of ARI. Did you mean I am ARI and ARI is I, or ARI is objectivism itself? I didn't mean either one of this. I meant you should check your premises regarding your evaluation of ARI. I meant I think your evaluation of ARI is wrong. You should check your premises with regard to it. Objectivism is not ARI. Objectivism is Ayn Rand, Ayn Rand's ideas. Frederick, apparently the astronauts won't get overtime pay for the additional 9 months they were stuck in space. People in my surroundings are taking are making a really big thing about it. Thoughts? Oh, I don't know. It depends on the contract. Did they have a contract that specified overtime pay, or do they not? I have no idea. I mean, maybe instead they get the next 6 months off. Maybe they get the 6-month vacation because they spent 6 months in space. So I don't know what the terms of their employment are, the contract. I don't know what exactly is going to happen. Maybe they don't get overtime, but what else? So I think it's super important to know a lot more than we do about what is going on before we judge, before we make judgment on it. Ayn Rand Institute is not Ayn Rand. Of course not. How can Ayn Rand Institute be Ayn Rand? Ayn Rand Institute does its best to preserve Ayn Rand's ideas and to comment, apply those ideas to issues of the day and to philosophical issues to the best of our ability. But Ayn Rand Institute is not objectivism. That is only Ayn Rand's writing. Ayn Rand Institute is dedicated to objectivism. It's trying to apply objectivism, but it's Ayn Rand Institute. Objectivism is Ayn Rand's ideas. That's what objectivism is. Nothing else. Nothing more than that. Nothing less than that. It is Ayn Rand's ideas. It's what Ayn Rand wrote, including Opa, but what Ayn Rand wrote. Well, that's what it is. That's what objectivism is. Ayn Rand's ideas. Those ideas are the philosophy she developed. But it's not the philosophy as interpreted. It's not the philosophy as developed by its Ayn Rand's philosophy. It's her ideas. That's it. That's what objectivism is. It's closed. There's no additions to objectivism. This show is not an objectivism show. It's a show based on objectivism. It's a show trying to apply objectivism. But this is not part of the corpus of objectivism. All right, guys. Thank you to all the super chatters. Really, really, really appreciate the support. Thank you to everybody for listening. Don't forget to like the show before you leave. Please like the show. We should have way over 100 likes to the show, given how many people listen today. And we have 107. It should be much higher than that. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Don't forget to go to Patreon, patreon.com, and sign up to be a monthly supporter of the show for whatever amount you feel you think is appropriate in terms of value for value and in terms of your own liquidity, wealth. All right, everybody, I will see you tomorrow, an hour earlier, so our regular time, 3 o'clock. I think that's right, tomorrow, Thursday, and on Friday. And then I'm off to Europe, and to London at least. Don't forget, if you're interested in the Egoism Seminar in London on March 29th, check out my website, yaronbrookshow.com. Check out the event on the 29th. Sign up for it. See you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.